If I had to start my cybersecurity career from absolute zero in 2026, knowing everything I now know as a recruiter, this is exactly what I would do. Welcome everyone to Cyber Careers with Gough, the show where we talk about cybersecurity careers, job searching, certifications, resumes, interviews, all the good stuff, and what employers are actually looking for, all from the recruiter side of the table. If you don't know me, I'm Gough. I've spent 15 years in recruitment, including cybersecurity and GRC, and I now coach people on how to break in and progress within the cyber industry. Now, today's episode is based on one of my most popular YouTube videos, which I released not too long ago. It's now got just over 60,000 views, so it's definitely a topic people want to hear about. But I didn't just want to pull the audio from that video and drop it into the podcast feed. So I've reworked this properly for audio, updated the thinking for 2026, and added a podcast-only Q&A section at the end where I'm going to answer a few of the questions I hear all the time from people who are trying to break into cybersecurity. Now, if you've already watched the YouTube version, you can still get value from this episode, especially in the Q&A at the end. And if you haven't watched it, stick with me from the start because this is the realistic roadmap I'd follow if I had to start again from zero. And I'm going to be honest with you, most people are still approaching cybersecurity careers completely wrong. I see it all the time. Someone gets excited about cybersecurity. They hear about all the jobs. They hear that the industry is growing and that the salaries can pay very well. They hear from people about the opportunities that's available and it's the future, etc. So they jump straight into a boot camp. They buy a certification course or they start collecting random cyber training. They then study for months upon end. They spend lots of money. They update their resume. But when they start applying, they hear nothing. There's no interviews, no callbacks, sometimes not even rejection emails. And usually the reason I see it's not that they're not capable, far from that. The reason is they skip the steps that actually make someone employable. They skip things like research, fundamentals, evidence. They skip networking. And people then wonder why certification on its own didn't open the door. So in this episode, I'm going to walk you through the exact roadmap I would follow if I was starting again from zero. Not a flashy version, not a get hired in 30 days, which you may have heard out there. None of that. This is a realistic version. The version I would actually follow if my career depended on it. And by the end of the episode, you should have a very clear step-by-step plan that will put you ahead of most people starting out because most people are still trying to shortcut the process. Let's get into it. Part 1, weeks 1 and 2, map the battlefield before you start training. The first thing I would do is not study. I would not buy a course. I would not sign up for any bootcamp whatsoever. I would not start asking myself which certification should I do first. The first thing I would actually do is understand the market. Understand what I'm getting into because cybersecurity is not one job. That is one of the biggest mistakes beginners make. They say, I want to get into cybersecurity, but that is not a target. If you think about it, that is a broad industry. It's like saying, I want to get into healthcare. Okay, but doing what? Nursing, physiotherapy, surgery, administration, mental health, emergency response. You get where I'm going here. Now, cybersecurity is the same. A SOC analyst role is different from a GRC analyst role. A penetration testing role is different from an identity and access management role. Cloud security is different from application security. So if I was starting from zero, I would spend the first up to 2 weeks mapping the battlefield, not applying, not panicking, not buying courses, but just understanding what the actual career path looks like and what's available to me. So let's break that down a bit more. In week 1, I would do role research. So for the first week, I would spend roughly 30 minutes a day on job boards. I'd look at LinkedIn, Seek if you're here in Australia, Indeed, which is here and America globally. I'd look at company career pages and I'd search for entry-level and junior cybersecurity roles and I'd read the job descriptions properly, not just the title. I'd have a look through the whole job description. I'd look through roles like SOC analysts, junior cybersecurity analysts, GRC analysts, IAM analysts, which is identity and access management, IT security analysts, cloud security analysts. And I'd ask myself one question. Does the day-to-day work of this role actually interest me? Because this really matters. Look through the roles, look through the descriptions. Does anything jump out? Does anything make you go, that is what I think I want to be doing? Now, some people like the idea of cybersecurity, but they don't like the actual idea of the work involved in the role they're chasing. For example, SOC analyst work can involve alerts, logs, escalations, investigations, shift work, which a lot of people don't realise, and a lot of process. Now, for the right people, some people love that. Some people really enjoy, getting hands-on in the investigations and alerts and logs. Some people even enjoy the flexibility of shift work in terms of nights, days, and varying it up a bit. However, some don't, and it's important you understand that. Now, GRC can involve policies, frameworks, controls, audits, risk registers, stakeholder management, lots of documentation. And some people think that sounds boring, and I get it. In a lot of people's eyes, that can be, whereas other people are perfectly suited to it. So once again, this is why I'm saying you need to look through up front, not just, I want to get into cybersecurity, but look into what actual role in cybersecurity do I want to focus on, or at least start to focus on. You've also got cloud security. Now, this might involve AWS, Azure, identity, permissions, login, etc. Again, it's a different style of work. So I would open 10 job descriptions a day and take notes. Very simple notes. I'd write things like, this sounds interesting, or this sounds boring, this keeps coming up, or this skill appears everywhere, this role seems too senior. And you'll start to get a picture of what it is that keeps coming up, what it is that you like, and what it is that you want to potentially focus on. Now, there's no judgment there for you, just data. Because by the end of that first week, there will be patterns that will start to appear. You'd start seeing the same skills, the same tools, certifications and expectations repeated again and again. And that's really useful. That is your market telling you what matters. Then moving on to week 2. This is where I would call it reality check convert. Okay, then moving into week 2. So this is where I'd talk about... Okay, so then moving into week 2, you've got reality check. So in week 2, I would speak to real people. And this is a step that most beginners skip, and it's a massive mistake. I guarantee if you ask people out there, or people who are trying to get into the market, have probably not done this next step. I would find 3 people to start with. You can go more if you like, but I would find 3 people on LinkedIn who are already doing roles I'm interested in. Now, not necessarily CISO. Straight away, you're going to think, I want to speak to the executives. I want to speak to the head of departments. That's not what we're targeting at this stage. Just people who are maybe 2, 3, 4 years ahead of you. I would then send a simple message, something like, hi Sarah, I'm currently exploring a move into cybersecurity, and your background in SOC analysts caught my eye. Hi Sarah, I'm currently exploring a move into... Then I would send a simple message, something like, hi Sarah, I'm currently exploring a move into cybersecurity, and your background in SOC analysis caught my eye. I'm not looking to ask for a job, but I'd really value 15 minutes to understand what the day-to-day work is actually like. Would you be open to a quick call? That's it. Keep it respectful, very specific, not needy. You're not asking for a job. It's just asking for insight. Now, you'll be surprised how many people are willing to help when the message is thoughtful. At the end of the day, people genuinely like to help people. And even if only one person replies, that one conversation could save you months, because they might tell you, actually, this role is more shift-based than people realise. Or if I was starting again, I'd learn networking first. Or everyone talks about pen testing, but there are more junior SOC roles. Or everyone talks about pen testing, but there are more junior roles in SOC and GRC. That kind of insight is gold and will help you a lot. Now, the 2026 advantage. The other thing I would do now, which people could not easily do years ago, is use... Now, the 2026 advantage. The other thing I would do now, which people could not do as easily years ago, is use AI to analyse job descriptions. I would copy 10 job descriptions for the same type of role into ChatGPT or Claude and ask, what are the most common skills, tools, certifications and responsibilities across these roles? I would then ask, which of these are realistic for a beginner to learn first? This does not replace your judgment, but it can help you see patterns quickly. And that is what you need at this stage. So by the end of 2 weeks, I would want you to know my... So by the end of 2 weeks, I would want to know my lane. Not forever, because you could always change direction later. That's the key thing to remember here. This isn't set in stone. You can change. But for now, you do need a lane and you need to pick one. Because once you know your target, everything becomes easier. You know what to study. You know what projects to build. You know what job ads to analyze. You know what to put on your resume, who to network with. And most people skip this and then spend months moving in circles. Please do not do that. Start with the market. Okay, moving on to part 2, month 1. This is where you build the foundations before chasing cybersecurity. So once I had a direction, I would build the foundations. This is where most people make their next big mistake. They get very excited about cybersecurity and jump straight into security tools, hacking platforms or advanced certifications. And I get it, it's tempting. You want to go headfirst into this sometimes, but you don't always understand computers properly, or you don't understand networks properly. And when that happens, you don't understand operating systems properly. And then they struggle in interviews because they cannot. And then you struggle in interviews because you cannot explain the basics. So if I was starting again, month 1 would be about foundation, not glamour, foundation. Next up, IT fundamentals. So first I would spend time understanding basic IT. That would be how computers work, how operating systems work, what hardware does, what software does, how users, permissions, files, processes and services work. Now, you don't necessarily need to sit the CompTIA A+ exam, but using A+ style content as a learning path can be very useful if you're truly starting from zero. And some people argue there. Some people think you should do the A+, some don't. It's a choice you can do, but I would probably use free resources first. You have Professor Messer, YouTube, Free Code Camp, basic IT fundamentals content, and it's free. You don't need to spend a fortune yet. Remember, you're still trying to get your head around what it is you're getting into. The goal is not to become an IT support expert overnight. The goal is to stop being confused by the basic language of technology. Because if you're trying to secure systems, you need to understand what those systems are. Now that brings me to network fundamentals. So I then move into networking, and this is non-negotiable. If there is one foundation that I think too many cybersecurity beginners skip, it's networking. Every single cybersecurity role touches networking in some way. SOC analyst, for example, you need to understand traffic, ports, protocols. Cloud security, you need to understand networks, subnets, security groups, routing. GRC, you may not be hands-on configuring devices every day, but you still need to understand the environment you're assessing. Incident response, you may ask. Again, networking activity matters. So if I was starting in 2026, I would study Network Plus level knowledge. And notice what I said there, Network Plus level knowledge. I'm not saying everyone must rush out and sit the exam immediately, but the syllabus is a very useful structure. I'd want to understand the OSI model, TCP and UDP, DNS, firewalls, VPN, switches, routers, etc. You do not need to become a network engineer before you start cybersecurity, but you cannot be allergic to networking because that will hurt you. Next up, security basics. Once I had a basic grip on IT and networking, I would start learning security fundamentals, including threats, vulnerabilities, risk, identity, access control, incident response, things like this. This is where Security Plus becomes useful. Again, not because it magically gets you hired, it doesn't, but it gives you a structured foundation. It teaches you the language. It helps you understand the broad areas of cybersecurity. And it is widely recognized by recruiters and hiring managers. In fact, it is the gold standard in entry-level cybersecurity certifications. But I would not treat Security Plus as the whole strategy. Security Plus is one piece. It's not the full roadmap. So what would I skip at this stage? Well, I would not spend thousands on a bootcamp in month 1. I'm not saying every bootcamp is bad, because there are some good ones out there. Some provide structure, some provide accountability, some people need that. But from a return on investment perspective, I wouldn't start there. Now, not because I understand the market, but from a return on investment perspective, I would not start there. Not because I understand the market, not because I understand my target role, and not even because I've used the free and low cost resources available. There's so much you can learn for free or very little money nowadays. So I'd protect my money at the beginning. I'd spend time before spending cash. Part 3. Coming into month 2, building evidence, not just knowledge. So month 2 is where I would start getting hands-on. This is the part that separates serious beginners from people who are just collecting information. There are too many people out there who I hear who spend months on the theory and haven't even got to the hands-on part yet. And that can't happen because recruiters and hiring managers are not just asking, what have you studied? They're also asking, what can you actually do? In fact, in this day and age, it is so important that you can actually prove what you can do. Now, this is especially important if you have no IT or cyber experience because your resume needs evidence. If your resume only says Security Plus certified, cybersecurity course, interested in cyber, passionate about cybersecurity, it's just not enough. Trust me, there are too many candidates with the same claims. You need proof, not perfect proof, but not senior level proof necessarily, but enough proof to show that you actually have engaged with the work. I suggest building a simple home lab. I would build nothing too complicated. You do not need a huge setup. You can start with your own laptop, VirtualBox or MVware. You can start with your own laptop, VirtualBox, a Linux virtual machine, a Windows virtual machine, maybe Windows Server later if you want to practice Active Directory basics. But the point is not to build the most advanced lab. The point is to get comfortable, creating users, changing permissions, installing tools, breaking things, fixing things, and understanding how systems communicate. Now, once again, I'm not a technical cybersecurity expert, but I understand what hiring managers look for. So if you're targeting SOC roles, this is especially useful because you need to become comfortable around logs, endpoint, users, alerts, and system behavior. This will come up in interviews. This will be expected from you. Use beginner platforms properly. I would then use platforms like Try Hack Me or Hack the Box Academy. But I'd use them properly, and this is really important. A lot of people sign up, click around, do a few easy rooms, and put it on their resume like it's a serious experience. That is not the move. I would pick structured beginner paths and finish them. For example, Linux fundamentals, network basics, intro to offensive security, SOC fundamentals, blue team style rooms, whatever fits my target role. And after each meaningful section, I would document what I learned. Not a huge essay, just a short write-up. What was the task? What did I do? What tool did I use? What did I learn? And what would I do differently next time? And this is how you start building a portfolio. So build one proper project. By the end of month 2, I would want one proper project. For a SOC pathway, that might be a basic SIEM lab, using Splunk Free, Elastic, or another beginner-friendly option. You can ingest sample logs, look for suspicious login attempts, or create a simple alert. But make sure you write up what you found. For a GRC pathway, that might be a simple, but write up what you found. For a GRC pathway, that might be a sample risk register or a basic security policy. For cloud security, that might be setting up a basic AWS or Azure environment. For IAM, that might be a mini project around user lifestyle, for example. The exact project depends on the role, but the principle is the same. Build something, document it, put it somewhere visible. GitHub, a blog, LinkedIn articles, a Notion page, a simple portfolio page. It doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to show evidence. So why does this matter from a recruiter's perspective? Well, from the recruiter's So why does this matter from a recruiter's perspective? Well, from the recruiter side, this makes a big difference. If I have 2 entry-level candidates in front of me, one has Security Plus but nothing else, and the other has Security Plus but a documented home lab, a few completed learning paths, a clear write-up of what they have been building, the second candidate is much easier to put forward. Why? Because they have reduced the risk. They've shown initiative. They've shown communication. They've shown practical learning, and they've given something to talk about with the hiring manager. And that really matters. This is where most beginners can stand out because most beginners don't do it properly. Okay, part 4. This brings us to month 3. So build connections before you need them. Month 3 is all about becoming visible. And I know some people hate this part. They say, I don't want to network. I don't know what to say. I feel awkward. I'm not experienced enough, etc. And some people quite often going into cybersecurity tell me that they're just not good at that side. They don't want to go out and speak to people necessarily. And I get it, but here is the reality. Cybersecurity is a relationship-driven industry. Of course, not entirely. You can still apply cold, but you can still get interviews. But here is the reality. Cybersecurity is a relationship-driven industry. Not entirely, of course. You can still apply cold. You still can get interviews through job boards, but referrals and relationships matter a lot. And if you're trying to break in with no experience, And if you're trying to break in with no experience, being known, even slightly, can make a difference. Now start online. The easiest place is online. LinkedIn, X, Discord communities, cybersecurity groups, local cyber associations. There's so many options out there. I would follow people who are already doing the work I want to do, whether that's SOC analysts, GRC professionals, cloud security, recruiters, hiring managers, content creators. Then I would engage thoughtfully, not great post or thanks for sharing. Actually add something. Add something, ask a question, share what you learn, comment on a point you found useful. An example could be, I'm currently learning network fundamentals and this helped me understand why DNS keeps coming up in SOC job descriptions. Now that kind of comment is simple, but it shows you're serious. Now share your learning publicly. I would also not start posting about what I'm learning. Don't pretend to be an expert. That is important. You do not need to act like a senior cybersecurity consultant when you are 3 months into your journey. Just document your journey. Something like, this week I completed a beginner Linux lab and finally understood file permissions properly. The biggest takeaway for me was how quickly misconfigured permissions can become a security risk. Now that's useful, isn't it? It shows learning, it shows communication and consistency. It gives people a reason to remember you, I suppose, and that's what's important. You should also look to attend events. So I would also attend one cyber event a month if possible. You have local meetups, B-sides, you've got vendor events, university or community cyber events. There's so many ones out there. Just Google it, have a look online, you'll find it. You do not need to walk in and impress everyone. You don't need to pretend you know everything. Your goal is simple. Your goal is to have 2 real conversations. That's it. I want you to focus on 2 conversations. Ask people what they do and how they got into the industry. Ask what they would recommend for someone starting out. Then connect on LinkedIn afterwards. Simple as that. If you can do that, I promise you, you will see benefits. Not everyone will come back to you. It won't always work, but I guarantee you do that enough, it will benefit you in the long term. Now the recruiter reality. So from a recruiter perspective, referrals are very powerful. If someone in the industry says to me, I met this person at a meetup, they are early in their journey, but they are switched on, they are doing labs and they communicate well, that can really carry weight. Not always enough to get hired immediately, okay, but enough to get noticed. And when you are entry level, getting noticed is half the battle. So month 3 is not just about learning, it's about becoming part of the industry before you're officially employed in it. And the mind shift matters. Part 5, month 4. Getting certified, but doing it strategically. So by month 4, I would start thinking seriously about certification, and the timing matters because I do not think certifications are useless. Far from it. I talk about certifications all the time. If you watch my YouTube channel, I'm always talking about them and they absolutely can help. But the problem is that many people use certifications as a substitute for strategy. They think, quite simply, if I get enough certifications, someone will hire me. Now, I can tell you right now, that is not how it works. In the past, years ago, maybe so, that was more the case. In this candidate-driven market, that's not the case. Certifications are a signal. They are not the whole case. They tell a recruiter or hiring manager that you have covered a body of knowledge. Security Plus, for example, shows that you understand the foundational knowledge, the theory, but they do not prove you can apply it. That is why I would want you to combine certifications with projects, networking, and a targeted job search. Now, Security Plus as the first serious cyber cert. So if I was starting from zero, Security Plus would likely be my first serious cybersecurity certification. Now, I do talk about the Network Plus and the A Plus as well, and these are credible options for you to look at. I'm going to talk about the Security Plus here because I think this one, in my opinion, is an absolute must. It's widely recognised, globally recognised, it's a vendor neutral, and it covers a broad range of security fundamentals. It appears in plenty. In fact, most entry-level job descriptions I see in cybersecurity often will state Security Plus. So it gives recruiters and hiring managers a familiar signal. Is it perfect? No. Will it get it hired by yourself? No. But does it help? Absolutely. And I really recommend it, especially when paired with evidence. That is the key. If you get Security Plus a documented lab, it's much stronger than just Security Plus alone. Security plus clear LinkedIn activity, projects and a targeted resume is stronger again. So what about Network Plus? Well, as I've just mentioned, if your networking knowledge is weak, I would study Network Plus level content first. Whether you sit the exam depends on your budget and goals. Some people may benefit from taking the exam, others may just need the knowledge, but don't skip the content. That is the main point. As I stated earlier in this podcast, networking is core fundamental to cybersecurity. You do need to understand networks. So choose your next cert based on your target role. Now, after Security Plus, I would not randomly just stack certifications. I would choose based on my target role. So if I was targeting SOC or blue team roles, I might look at Cyber Defender's CCDL1. That's a great certification. Or CompTIA CYSA Plus or BTL1. I would look at Splunk certifications, Microsoft SC200 if Sentinel is common in my target market. Now, if I was targeting GRC, I might look at ISO 27001 foundations or lead implementer later, because in GRC, you need to know all about the regulations, security governance and risk focused training, Essential 8 knowledge if I was targeting roles here, for example, in Australia. Now, if I was looking at cloud security, I would look at AZ 500 for Azure, AWS security pathways, GCP, which is Google Cloud Security, if relevant to my market. And if I was targeting identity access management, IAM roles, I would look at Microsoft identity certifications such as Okta, SailPoint, etc. Now, depending on what employers are asking for, but I would not chase everything. That's the trap. Trust me, I see people out there that have got all of them. It's great. I'm not saying it's necessarily a negative thing to have certifications, but what I'm saying is you don't want to get in the trap of spending so much time passing all these different certifications that aren't necessarily relevant to the roles that you're going for. It'll cost you a lot of money and a lot of time. And particularly if you're entry level, focus on what is needed to get you in the market. So avoid the cert stacking trap. People start with Security Plus, then do the CYSA Plus, then Pen Test Plus, then another cert, then another. And 6 or 12 months later, they've got a long list of certifications, but still no interviews. Part 6, months 5 and 6. Apply smart, not everywhere. Now, by months 5 and 6, I would start applying. I would not spray my resume everywhere and do a scattergun approach. That's another mistake I see. A lot of people apply to hundreds of roles with the same resume and then wonder why nothing happens. I'd rather apply to 10 to 20 suitable roles properly than 100 random roles badly. Fix the resume and LinkedIn first. Before applying, I would update my resume and LinkedIn around my target role. If I was targeting SOC analyst roles, my LinkedIn headline might say, Aspiring SOC analyst, Security Plus, Home Lab projects in SIEM, logs and threat detection. Now, you may adjust the wording depending on your situation. If you're already in IT support, you could say, IT support professional transitioning into SOC analysis, Security Plus, Home. That is stronger because it connects your current experience to your target. On the resume, I would include a targeted summary, a skills section aligned to the role, relevant certifications, a project section, transferable experience. I would put links to GitHub, write-ups or LinkedIn posts. The project section is important. If you have no cyber work experience, your project needs to carry more weight. Do not hide them at the bottom like an afterthought. I would also then make sure I would tailor each and every application. I can't stress this enough. Do not just send your same CV out. For each role, I would tailor the resume. Not rewrite everything, just tailor it. So I would have a generic version that I've tailored that covers the generic information of what I've done. Use that as the base, and every job you apply for, you can get that generic version up and tweak it and tailor it for each specific role. So I'd read the job description and ask, what skills do they mention repeatedly and what tools matter? Is this more SOC, GRC, IAM, cloud or general security? What language are they using? Then I would adjust the summary, the order of skills, the most relevant projects, some wording in the bullet points. Now this might take 10 to 15 minutes per application, but you do get quicker the more you do it. But it's worth it. Generic applications are easy to send and easy to ignore. I would also apply to realistic roles. I would focus on roles that are genuinely realistic. Junior SOC analyst level 1, cybersecurity analyst, IT security analyst, GRC analyst, IAM analyst, security administrator, some IT support roles with security exposure. That last one is important. If you're starting from zero, your first step may not have cybersecurity in the job title. It might be IT support at a company where you can get exposure to security tools, identity access, tickets, endpoint protection, phishing reports, or compliance tasks, that can still be a very smart move. So don't let your ego reject stepping stones. Sometimes the fastest path into cybersecurity is actually through a role that gets you close to cybersecurity first. Now, after you've applied, I want you to start reaching out. For each application, I would also try to find a relevant person on LinkedIn. A recruiter, a hiring manager, a team lead, someone in the department. Now, this isn't always possible, but have a look. And I would send a short message, not a desperate essay. Something like, "Hi James, I've just applied for the junior SOC analyst role within your team. I'm currently building hands-on experience through SIEM labs and security learning paths, and I'm particularly interested in the detection and response side of the role. I'd be grateful if you had a chance to look at my application." Short, relevant, professional. Will everyone respond? Not at all. In fact, probably most won't, but I can promise you some will. And sometimes that is enough to get your application looked at. Now, keep building while applying. This is really important. Don't stop learning when you start applying. A lot of people enter application mode and they freeze. They almost think, "Well, I've done that. I'm just going to start applying." They wait, they get rejected, they feel bad, they apply again. They wait, get rejected. You can see the pattern. Instead, keep building. Every week, improve the portfolio, write another post, finish another lab, have another conversation, tailor another resume. Your job search should create momentum. Don't drain it. So if I had to start cybersecurity from absolute zero in 2026, this is the roadmap I would follow. First, I would map the market before choosing a direction. I would study job descriptions, speak to people in the roles, and pick a realistic target. Then I would build the foundations, basic IT, networking, operation systems, security fundamentals. I would then build evidence, home labs, try hack me or hack the box pathways, projects, portfolios, write-ups, things like this. I'd then build connections. So I'd network online, in person, through local communities, through thoughtful conversations. Following that, I would get certified strategically. Security Plus, in my eyes, is a must. That would likely be the first serious cybersecurity certification you go for. But once again, you may include A Plus and Network Plus in that as well. I would then apply properly. Targeted roles, tailored resume, clear LinkedIn, project evidence, follow-up messages, and I would keep building while applying. That is the roadmap. Not a shortcut, not a magic trick, but a realistic path. And the reason it works is because it does what most beginners fail to do. It reduces the risk of hiring you. And that is what employers care about. They're not just asking, does this person want a cyber job? They are actually asking, can this person learn, communicate, solve problems, understand the basics, and become useful to the team? Your job is to prove that the answer is yes. All right, I hope you've all found that useful. Now, this is the podcast-only Q&A section. So if you watched a version of this topic on YouTube before, this is the extra part I wanted to add for the podcast because there are questions I hear all the time from people trying to break into cybersecurity. So let's go through a few of them right now. Question 1, do I need to start in help desk before cybersecurity? Not always, but a lot of people, help desk or IT support can be a very smart stepping stone. I do know some people hate hearing that. Because they want to go straight into cybersecurity. I get it. And some people can. But if you have strong projects, strong networking knowledge, good certifications, a clear target role, and you interview well, you may be able to land an entry-level cyber role directly. But if you have no IT background at all, help desk can give you something very valuable. It gives you real-world exposure to users, tickets, systems, identity, permissions, troubleshooting, endpoint tools. And that experience can transfer very well into cybersecurity, especially for SOC, IAM, GRC, and security analyst roles. So the key is not to treat help desk as a failure. Honestly, please don't think like that. Treat it as a launch pad, but be strategic. Look for IT support roles where you can get exposure to security tasks, things like MFA or access review, phishing tickets. That kind of experience can become extremely useful. So do you need help desk? Honestly, not always. But should you dismiss it? 100% not. In fact, if an opportunity comes up in help desk that gives you the exposure that's needed, it could be a great ticket into cybersecurity. All right, question 2. Is Security Plus enough to get hired? Okay, usually no. Security Plus is useful. It is globally recognized. It is the certification I talk about the most. And it can definitely help you pass some initial screening. But Security Plus on its own is rarely enough. Now, years ago, there was a stage where it wasn't as candidate driven, and Security Plus might have been enough to do that. In this day and age, in this candidate driven market, it's not enough because thousands of people have it and thousands of people are looking. The real question is, what sits around that certification? Do you have projects? Do you understand networking? Can you talk through what you've built? Can you explain basic security concepts clearly? Can you connect your previous experience to that role? And, can you show evidence that you were serious? So Security Plus is a strong checkbox, but it's not the whole application. I think the mistake people do is, I passed Security Plus, now I'm job ready. Now, for some people, you might be, but most of the time, the better mindset is Security Plus gives me the foundation. Now I need to prove I can apply it. That is where labs, projects, write-ups, and targeted applications come in. So my answer is Security Plus absolutely helps, but Security Plus evidence is a lot stronger. Question 3. How long does it really take to break into cybersecurity? Now, I get this question all the time. And it's a question that everyone wants a clean answer to, and I understand why, but the honest answer is it depends. I mean, there isn't really a clear answer to that. If you already have IT experience, you might and probably will move faster. If you're coming from help desk, systems admin, networking, DevOps, cloud, software development, or even technical support, you may already have some very valuable transferable skills. But if you're starting from a completely non-technical background, it may take longer, and you've got to be open to that. You have to expect that. For some people, 6 months is possible, but for many people, I'd think in terms of 9 to 18 months. Now, that doesn't mean 9 to 18 months of full-time study. It means 9 to 18 months of consistent progress, learning, building, networking, applying, constantly improving. Remember, one thing about cybersecurity, one thing I love about it is you're always learning. It's always improving. So some people move quicker, some take longer. The danger is comparing yourself to someone online who says they broke into cybersecurity in 90 days. Now look, that's happened, and it does happen, and it may happen to you. But what was their background? What did they know? How many hours a week did they study? What market were they in? And what role did they actually land? There's so many variables there. Please go into this expecting it may take a while. If it lands quicker, fantastic. But do not build your plan around someone else's highlight reel. Build your plan around consistent action. Question 4. I get this one quite a bit. What if I'm older or changing careers later in life? This comes up a lot. My answer to this is quite simple. Being older is not automatically a disadvantage, but you need to position yourself to your previous experience properly. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you've worked in another industry, you probably have transferable skills: communication, stakeholder management, documentation, customer service, leadership, probably risk awareness, commercial awareness for that point. These things matter, especially in cybersecurity. The mistake career changers make is either ignoring their previous experience or trying to pretend they are 21-year-old graduates. Just don't do that. Have a think about your previous experience and what value does it have? A lot of people miss out some real valuable skills that they've learned in previous trades or previous careers because they just don't think it's relevant. Don't just look at cybersecurity as, well, I don't have IT background, so it can't be relevant. Think about soft skills. What soft skills do you have? Remember, in cybersecurity, part of your job is to be able to liaise with stakeholders in the business and talk to them through, cybersecurity matters and threats in the business and use jargon that they just have no idea about. So if you can't communicate with a stakeholder in the business about something they need to know in a clear way, then cybersecurity, you won't be doing the job correctly. You have to be able to communicate properly, clearly to people who don't understand IT talk. For example, if you come from finance, GRC or risk might make sense to you. If you come from customer service, then SOC or IAM could make sense because communication and ticket handling matter. Now, you might come from an operations, compliance, process and incident management. Now, if you come from operations, compliance, process and incident management may transfer. If you come from teaching, your ability to explain complex things simply could be useful in awareness training, GRC or stakeholder facing roles, just like the point I just mentioned, because you're able to explain complex things simply. So no, you're not too old, but you do need a clear story. Why cyber? Why this role? Why now? Why does your background help? What have you done to build the technical foundation? This is the story you need to tell. Question 5. What should I do this week if I'm starting from zero? Okay, so if you're starting from zero this week, don't overcomplicate it. Here is what I would do. Read 10 cybersecurity job descriptions, not 1, 10. Look for entry-level roles and write down the skills that keep appearing. Second, pick one target role to explore. Not forever, just for now. Whether that's SOC, GRC, IAM, cloud security. Pick one lane to investigate. Third, I would start learning network fundamentals, so 30 minutes every day, and start with free resources. Fourth, I'd create a simple document called Cyber Career Roadmap. Track what you're learning, track job descriptions, track skills, track projects you want to build, and track people you want to speak with. And then fifth, I'd post one thing on LinkedIn about what you are learning, something simple. Now, I've talked about all this in obviously the podcast earlier, and this is just a quick overview of what I'd do, but I'd make sure I start with these things. So don't sound like you don't need to sound like an expert, just start documenting the journey. And that's enough for week 1. The goal is not to transform your life in 7 days. The goal is to start moving in the right direction. So that is the roadmap I would follow if I was starting cybersecurity from zero in 2026. Now, if you take one thing from this episode, let it be this. Do not just collect information, build evidence. The people who break in are not always the smartest. They are usually the people who get clear, stay consistent, build proof, and keep showing up. Honestly, keep showing up. If you found this useful, follow the show so you do not miss future episodes. And if you have any questions you want me to answer in a future podcast Q&A, in fact, please let me know if you do and I will use those. Check the link in the show notes and send it through. Thanks for listening. As always, keep leveling up your career. I'll see you in the next episode.